Hi, you are listening to the You Crack Me Up podcast. Dr. A and Dr. B over here.
Itty tat your crack on a yola that podcast.
In other words, that was Dothraki.
You guys have no idea. You guys have no idea how much I had to pump myself up for that.
That
so
was
Dothraki
for welcome back to the You Crack Me Up podcast.
And if you're lost, just go back and listen to the previous episode and you'll understand. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Go listen to the interview, Dr. Brandon's interview that I did of him and challenged him to say some Dothraki.
They challenged me of if I could make up a language, what would I do? And then at the time I could not do it. So then our producer, of course, was like, oh, hey, here, I looked it up. This is welcome back to the You Crack Me Up podcast and Dothraki. And so I was like, you have to do this. And I was like, okay, here we go.
You nailed it.
And then she was like, you got to come in. I'm like, I do not have a problem with that. Let's go. So hopefully I didn't blow your ears out with that.
We're all psyched up.
But welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Hey, just really quick. If you've gotten anything from this podcast, would you just share this with a friend? We really appreciate that. The feedback from you guys has been amazing, and we cannot thank you enough. Please make sure that you are subscribed because we have new episodes that will be coming out every Monday, and I don't want you guys to miss those. Again, what have we done so far? So we've done an interview of Dr. Alex with, again, these are not traditional interviews. They have really hilarious questions of both her and I. We have those up now. We did an episode specifically on migraine. Mm-hmm. We did a episode on the ugly truth where we just talked about, it's the non-sexy things that are going to help get you better. And our first episode talked about our birth stories that we both got to experience. And just, there's all sorts of goodies in there. So again, if there's ever an episode that you feel like you got something, please just share that. We really appreciate it. Podcasts are literally free, so you can share them with anyone. That's part of why we love this is this information is a little bit more long form so we can give you context and you can share that with people. Because again, I know you guys love my TikTok. I am your mom's favorite TikToker, but I need a little bit more time to kind of break down the things that I'm talking about. And that's exactly what this space is. Yep. So Dr. A, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we are going to get into the stigma and the toughness, but just like kind of how tough it is to have an invisible illness or a chronic illness and what you come up against on a regular basis, whether that is with your loved ones, whether that's in the workplace, whatever that,
it can even be strangers
just during your daily life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you have a chronic health issue, but you look okay, right? If you have an invisible illness, it's because all the pains inside your head or inside your body. So you look fine, but you're not fine. And when it happens, and if it's chronic, right, it's happening multiple times a week, multiple times a month, or it's constant.
Or every day,
every single day. Mm-hmm. And you only have so much energy throughout the day to just do your daily function of life, to take a shower, to make food, maybe, heaven forbid if you're a parent as well.
Seriously.
If you have a job.
Oh, and
it
I know
requires a lot of energy.
It keeps some people from wanting to be parents because there's like, I struggle even trying to take care of myself.
Right.
And again, I've talked about this on other episodes. I love being a parent. Of course, there was nothing in my mind that was like, maybe not. I'm like, I want to. But there are things and lessons and stuff that I get to learn through that I never would have imagined. And I know people that are just like, they're worried about it. They want to be able to do it, but they're concerned. What is this going to look like? I have patients bring it up all the time. Why are you in here? I need to get something figured out. I would prefer a solution that doesn't require me having to take more medications. I don't want to go get a surgery. I'm tired of these injections. This is what I like to be able to do. And I'm always like, perfect. You're definitely in the right place for that. But then this other stuff starts to come out. Like, yes, you want to get out of pain. We want to help you get out of pain. But it's the stuff in your life that it keeps you from either being able to do. Like, you're terrified of being a parent because you're like, some days you just cannot function and you don't want to put all that weight on your spouse. You're worried about that. Like, it's very real. And, I've heard this in a bunch of places. Whenever you're healthy, you get all the wishes. You get all the wants. You could want anything. You're like, you know what? I want to go do this. I want to start a business. I want to hike across the United States. I want to travel to these places. It's unlimited. When you feel good, the options are unlimited. But when you're sick, you only have one wish. And that's that you could be healthy again because you would love the ability to do all those things. But the problem is we've sort of dropped the ball with the system and machine that we've created that sort of, in my opinion, doesn't get to the source. And again, when I say source, for me, it's like there's a lot of different sources, but we're trying to get to the source, the root, whatever is the underlying issue that's causing what's going on. We need to do that. A lot of the issue, I think, with our system is we're mostly in triage. The hospital system, the medical system is so overworked, in all honesty, that they're just trying to do what they can with the time that they have with you in order to address whatever it is that's going on. And when it's triage, as quick as possible. Tell me what's going on. Okay, here's this, do this. And so you feel a little mistreated in that situation because nobody listens to you. Like I'm assuming that's probably what you hear from patients all the time.
Yeah, that nobody listens. When patients come into the clinic for the first time, I mean, y'all, our first visit with a new client, with a new patient is complete data gathering, information gathering, functional nervous system testing, x-rays, going through a very thorough health history. And we don't actually do anything except listen and consult and figure out what to do. But patients leave and they say, I already feel better.
Yeah.
I feel better just by being in here before we even do anything. And I think that's because the way we provide healthcare, we really do put the care back into healthcare.
Yeah.
And you walk in and the environment is different. It feels different. It smells different. You automatically can tell it's not, there's time set just for you. There's not a whole waiting room full of people that we have to get in and get out, especially on a first visit.
Yeah.
When we need to get to know you and figure out what that source is. What is the root issue for why you're experiencing what you're experiencing now?
Because we're 100% invested in that. And again, she said we actually put the health and care back into healthcare, both of them. That's super crucial to us because, I really don't think people are getting that experience out there. And I know they're not because of what patients tell me.
Yeah, they're definitely not.
And we've talked about this on other episodes. Like for me, I need to know that story. I need to understand what it is that you're dealing with and what you've experienced and what things we've tried and past traumas. I need to know.
It's so important because, like you said, there's so many there could be so many different sources. And all those sources point back to the nervous system and the adaptability of that system, which is what our expertise is in. However, there's lots of ways to support the nervous system. What we do is very specific, and we have very specific ways of measuring what we're looking for and what those goals are. Talk therapy is also really important. There's lots of different body work, different types of therapies. Spirituality becomes very important. There's a whole lot of things we need to look at, in terms of what happened to you when you grew up.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And how did I get here?
I think a lot of, I really think this is a big issue in today's society is that we feel like, oh, we're in a simulation and it's this, and we feel like there literally is no purpose to our life. So then we just kind of do whatever. I want to tell you right now, and again, this is just me, I believe that you do serve a purpose. There is a purpose to your life. And I think, especially when it comes to anxiety and depression, understanding that exists and it is real and it is there for you is something that you need. And it is something that has been taken away from you because it's not talked about. We kind of tell you that it's strictly and only about biological factors. It's a imbalance of chemicals in your brain. Your wires are crossed, which, you and I were talking about this earlier before we started the episode. It's just telling you that the way that you're feeling doesn't matter. And I would never make anyone feel that way when they come see me because it's just not true. And I don't think anyone should be treated that way.
Not only does it matter, right? It's normal.
It's normal.
It's normal in that you are, I think in our society too, we are at a point where everybody's constantly chasing happiness and we feel like we're supposed to be happy all the time.
But
and if it's
empty
toxic,
happiness.
if it's quote unquote toxic, I hate that word because anyway, lots of things can go into that. But whatever the case, we're constantly saying, okay, that's not for me. Then I just need to exit this situation, or I just need to go do this, or whatever the case. And y'all, just like we're supposed to feel happy, we're also sometimes supposed to not feel good. Like that's what part of being a human is. When somebody passes away and you're in grief, you're not supposed to be happy. You're not supposed to shove that aside.
Mm-mm.
If you go through a divorce, a breakup, if you've gone through emotional abuse, physical abuse, chemical abuse, if we have these behaviors where we're numbing out because we're so scared of those bad, icky, scary feelings. So we just don't want to feel anything.
Well, that's escapism. We have a very strong, high ability to have all levels of escapism nowadays with
TikTok videos,
games,
Netflix, whatever platform streaming.
YouTube, you're just like,
whatever.
I'll escape my world because I don't like it and I will go here. Which, again, trust me, there's stuff that I love to do because I'm like, I'm going to watch that. It's going to make me laugh. We want to see that. Like, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I'm saying using escapism as the tool to help you get over this is not the way to do it. Ignoring the issue is never going to be the thing. When the check engine light comes on, the sooner we jump on that, the better it's going to be. Is it convenient? No. Like we always talk about, is it sexy? Probably not. It's probably going to be some shit that you're like, great. Another thing that I needed to do. But it is crucial for you, and it is one of the things that will literally, if you'll just work on this, it'll give you your life back. It will change the way you look at things. Like you said, I literally pray for this every day in my office. And again, if this offends anyone, I hate to tell you, I don't want this to come across preachy, but it's like you just might not like this podcast because, yes, I am a believer, and I literally pray every time when I'm in the office that people would literally feel a difference just by walking in, that their lives, their demeanor, their emotions, the way that they feel would literally feel different just by being in our office. Like I want to control the environment that much, that this is a safe space. This is a place where you come to, you can, come, share, experience, go through all that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all sunshine and rainbows in my office. I have patients that cry, that have breakdowns, that we dive into stuff, like we really get into things. That stuff happens all the time for me.
Well, healing requires you to get out of your comfort zone, because if you stay in your comfort zone, nothing's ever going to change. However, that also means you have to have a safe space. The environment has to be safe in order for you to feel safe enough to get out of your comfort zone.
Well, how often in school did you ever really think like those experiences were going to be the things? Like I always thought the greatest impact that I could make was by getting our hands on patients and adjusting them and going through that process. But I now more and more am starting to realize that the knowledge, the empowerment, the just being an anchor and a support place for people, another person that they can reach out to, a community for them, can have crazier and greater impacts than any of the other stuff that I can do. Because again, it's part of why I want this podcast to get to as many people as possible, because you're not alone. You're not the only person that's dealing with that. You're not the only person that's struggling with that. Everybody deals with that.
This is
Some people are just good at hiding that shit.
The only podcast that you'll listen to feel heard.
That's right.
And I think that's it. When I get thanked, right, by patients, yes, it's for results, but it's seriously like the number one thing. I think that it's like, thank you. I feel like it's changed my life. But at the same time, like it's what they're saying throughout care. And the number one thing is just thank you for listening to me. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for walking me through this and answering my questions and taking the time.
And it sounds crazy, and you're just like, but there's so many people, how would I have time? And I'm like, in all honesty, trust me, that does stress me out, but it's part of why we have what we have. We have a team. I've got other docs I'm bringing on. We're going to have the ability for, my office will make a greater impact with more people, to be able to connect with more people so that we can change more people's lives. The podcast is here for that. My TikTok is here for that. Any of the stuff that we do is to be able to hopefully share that message, and
it's also to not necessarily, like our goal in the clinic is to put ourselves out of a job, because if we're doing our job, you should not need us. Like we don't want you to come see us multiple times a week for the rest of your life. Like I would be really shitty at my job if that was the case. You might as well be giving you a prescription that you continue to have to refill.
And you'll still come hang out. We get it. I never push you away. I'm just like, hey, as you get better, we won't see you as often.
You need to graduate. Your body needs to learn something new. It should be adapting better.
You want to talk about the hard part? Like, how hard is that when you?
It's so bittersweet.
When you build, it's
very bittersweet.
Y'all have to realize for us, when we build these relationships with you, I'm invested. I'm heavily invested in you and making sure that we figure this out. If you're still struggling while I'm working with you, I think about you all the time because I think about, what are we missing? Is there something I'm not picking? Like, what is the thing that's going to make that happen? And then as you start to get better, we just don't see you as often. And it's one of those things, like, I love that. It makes me so happy because you're spending more time with your family. You're going on vacations.
And that's by design. Like, we're not supposed to see you. Like, that's how our care goes.
Yep.
We build it out that way, and we make sure that that's the case.
But you're always still a part of the community, and
that's what I was going to say. That's why we have communities, right? We've established communities in our office and have events and things like that because we develop these relationships with our patients. We're on a first name basis a lot of times. And
I always push people. I'm like, there's going to be some people that I want to bring on here, some that hopefully I'll get to eventually. Like, I would love some of my followers from TikTok because some of those people, I've never done anything other than share what I know and them implement it, and it changed their lives and them get better. And I always tell them, I'm like, you are a greater advocate than I could probably ever be because you've been there. You were exactly where they were. They can relate to you more. And then they can see that by you just taking and implementing those simple things, which were completely for free.
The unsexy things.
I just gave them away, was able to literally change your life. And so I always say, I want to make someone that's going to be a good advocate of what we do. Like, I will tell people all the time, I'm going to straight up tell you if you are a good candidate or a good fit for what we do. Because if you're not, I'm going to connect you with someone that is, because that's what's most important to me. It's not about the money. It's not about any of that stuff. My reputation for me is the thing that I actually value the most. What people think about me
the most
is so important to me.
Yep.
And I would not sacrifice that for anything. So I just will not take on certain things that I don't feel like we're going to be able to give you the greatest benefit for what you're looking for. And I'm not going to push anyone away. I'm like, listen, I just feel like this would be a better fit, but please keep us in mind, or please reach out, or please.
Well, we'll often check back and be like, hey, did you go do that?
Did you go do that? Are you doing that? Is this going better?
Yeah.
Like
we don't have ego in what it is that we're doing and trying to help people. We genuinely just want to serve, and our expertise lends itself into this chronic health arena, which is a huge underserved population of people, and it's a giant population of people. And what we do is that's what part of why we're doing the podcast too. Not many people know about what it is that we do, and
I can't wait till we get to do that episode.
In terms of in the clinic, but also the tools that we teach while people are under care, and like Brandon's talking about, helping people that we cannot help in the clinic, that we cannot physically place our hands on and help with the type of care that we do, and how they're still getting results. And all of that is super important, super fun.
Well, and here's a couple things. So I'm going to tell you guys a story real quick because it's just literally recently happened and I'm still working through it with someone. But I want you to know, stick through this episode because we do want to give you some tangible things that you're going to be able to take. So if you're not, like, you listen to this because you just are like, hey, I keep taking these things so I can implement them. I love where I'm at right now, where my health is, but I'm always working on this stuff. So thank you for that stuff. That's great. But if you're still struggling or you're going through this and you need those tips, like, we want to be able to give you some of those. But I also want to educate you on, if you haven't dealt with a chronic health issue, but you know someone that does deal with it, here's how to respectfully talk to them, to support them, to be there with them. Because that's the issue with the stigma, is you've got to realize when you have an invisible illness, the thought is in your head that you're like, is this in my head? Am I crazy? Like, what is it? Like, you go through all these thoughts because you're just trying to figure out what the hell is going on and why is this happening? So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit of a story, and just for protection's sake, I'm obviously going to change the name. So we'll just call her Sally for all, purposes, basically. But I had, this is a patient of mine. She just recently reached back out. She traveled to see me from, I want to say it's like Minnesota, somewhere in that area. And she was going to another one of our offices and then just hasn't been as consistent as she needed to. And she's kind of found herself back in the trap where she was before. And because she's in so much pain, she's got back on these very strong medications, and it's all kind of created this really bad feedback loop for her. And it's unfortunately put her in a crazy, really depressive state where she wants to commit suicide. She wants to be done. She's like, it would be so much easier. It would be less stress on my husband. It would be like, there's just all these things about it that it's just like, I'm a little bit of a sensitivity warning here. Like, I get it if you've dealt with this or if you know someone, but these conversations need to happen. And so, it's very easy when you see the stories of, these people that wanted to commit suicide and then, fortunately they tried to, but it didn't happen. And at that moment, it literally changed their lives. And like, you know what those people always say? They just wanted one person to look at them in the eyes, put their hand on their shoulder and go, "Are you okay?" And we all love to run our mouths and talk shit. Like, I'm always there for you. People love to put up a Facebook post. Hey, if you're dealing with this, reach out. Very rarely do people ever want to be there for you when things are ugly as shit. Because guess what? It's uncomfortable. It's not like I'm okay and you're this. Your energy is going to tend to draw me into that energy, and I'm going to have to be able to make sure that I can hold a safe space to be there with you in that, and then slowly draw you out.
That's it though, right there, right? Most of us people do not know how to hold that space or create a space for somebody that is truly suffering. We want to fix it. Mm-hmm. And we say things like, I think about miscarriage, mm-hmm. right? You hear people say things like, "Oh, but your other kids are so beautiful." Or, "Oh, but it's okay, you can try again." Mm-hmm. Things like that.
But they're dismissive comments.
They're absolutely dismissive, and they're said with good intention. However, they completely gloss over the fact that woman just experienced a loss of life.
Well,
that
don't
is
focus
so
on this.
Insignificant.
You have kids, like,
yes.
Or don't focus on this. You can still try. It's like, but that still hurts.
It goes back right now as so being right now. I wouldn't even necessarily call myself a parent. Right now, I'm a caregiver. Because
you're a parent.
She's just,
you're just
I'm
learning.
A parent, but she's right. But she's a baby, so she's not talking yet. She's not able to like.
But she is talking.
Absolutely,
mm-hmm.
she is.
She's communicating. Let's make sure we do this. She's communicating.
I love it. She's communicating and according to her developmental needs, right?
Correct.
Absolutely. And so that's what's so fun. And this is probably one of my biggest personal passions is this figuring out the developing brain and how behavior truly is a window into the brain, mm-hmm. and being able to communicate in a way that teach, learn all of these things in a way that a human will truly comprehend and take with them versus whatever the case. And so
you want to give her the best opportunity in life, no matter what, which again, anyone wants to do with their kids.
Well, so I'm thinking about Georgia, mm-hmm. and how she'll be crying, right? And she's just, whatever, I missed her tired cue, and now she's overtired, and so she's pissed off at me, and she's crying. Mm-hmm. And my instinct is to say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
It's the immediate instinct.
What I am telling her is that you don't need to be crying. Mm-hmm. Why are you crying? You don't need to be crying. Everything's okay. Mm. And in her reality, everything is not okay. Everything is not okay. And I know, so I'm already catching myself. I'm already trying to retrain my own brain, my own communication. And right now I'm saying, you're safe, you're safe, mm-hmm. you're safe. Instead of it's okay, because she is absolutely allowed to have big emotions. She's absolutely allowed to be sad or mad, whatever that looks like, because it's my job to teach her how to deal with those feelings. And if I'm constantly telling her it's okay, focus on this other thing, she's never going to learn how to deal with those feelings.
Yes.
They're just going to be suppressed, and they're going to come out sideways in some way, shape, or form, right? And how often is that in chronic illness? Because our stress is not integrated. Our nervous systems are just like effed.
Well, and people don't realize that, unfortunately, again, your parents, hopefully, I know there's going to be exceptions, tried to do the best they could with what they had. And if they didn't, I'm sorry. And like, I'm still here for you. I'd work with you through that. But what you're talking about is where some of that like deep-seated stuff can come from even as a younger age, because it's like, oh, don't worry about your emotions because I don't want your emotions to affect mom, so calm down. Or make sure your emotions are here because when dad gets home this. So it's like,
you're going to make mommy sad if you do that. Well,
daddy's really whatever whenever he comes
Yes.
home. He's going to be really tired. So don't mess with him and don't
make
stress him out
noise.
or anything. And it's like, so the way I feel isn't as important as this. So it's putting yourself as less than or here on the
Right.
hierarchy, which again is super hard because you're like, you want to make sure that they're heard and you're trying to figure out what's going on.
These are a lot of like generational type of things that we're breaking, you know, that you just do better with new information.
And you
like
try
we
to
all
do
do
the
the best we can with the information we've had at the time. I have these conversations with my parents all the time because they were fantastic parents.
Yep.
Yet I have stuff, you know, and I know I'm going to screw up my kid in some way, shape, or form. And I'm only going to find out about it when she's able to reflect back on her life in some way and be like, Mom, this was really great, but this sucked.
And you can't protect them from everything. It's the
Right.
hardest realization that you have to have is like, I unfortunately cannot protect you from everything. It destroys me.
I told myself I was a bad mom yesterday because Georgia got her first mosquito bite.
Oh my gosh. Mom guilt is so
What do I make
real.
that
I
mean?
hope you guys understand.
I make it mean I'm a bad mom.
Yeah,
Right? But
Oh,
I
she's
live
crying,
in Texas
or
and
she's
she
not
likes it
sleeping,
outside.
or this happens,
Got a
or
mosquito
something happened. So therefore, it makes me a terrible mother. It's
Right.
not just those things happen.
Right.
But I want to make sure, and again, the reason that we talked about this was like being able to hold that safe space. But don't bullshit yourself and say like, oh yeah, or put that like be there for someone in that moment when that was the moment that they needed you the most. Because we literally have been texting. I'm setting up a time to get on the phone and talk to her. Like I have no training in that. I just know what she's going through. I understand how to kind of talk somebody through that. And I also understand how to neurologically get you in a better place and then start to stack things on that will make you believe that that's a better place to be. Okay, so let's get you back to here. Like I literally have her every day right now. I'm like, you take a 2-minute cold shower every day, no matter what, every day. She's like, fine. I hate them. But because I followed up with her and I was like, have you been doing it? Yes. I said, I also want you to write out when you have a negative thought. Most of the time it's like, stop having negative thoughts. No. Write out where you think that's coming from, and then write out evidence that proves to you that that's not true. What we have to realize is that you're neurologically trained for that. We are neurologically right now based on the environment and community that unfortunately we're in is just like it's our default is to look for what's shitty in the situation.
That's our default biology in
You're
general.
just like, God, these lights in here are so bright. Like it's so easy to look for the thing that's negative of like, God, it's, this chair is so whatever. But what about the things that you can look for that are positive? It's like, well, we have this. Well, I'm getting her in. I have the ability to have a great conversation with one of my friends. This is going great. These things are going like there's that inherent thing. I've got a patient that's not happy because we didn't follow up with her very well. And again, we dropped the ball. So I have to learn the lesson in that. But I could be like, God, that's my day. But I'm like, that's not my day. Like there's so much other stuff that is going on. So I essentially have her doing that of like, let's write down things that we're grateful for, that we have gratitude for. And I'm like, it could be simple. It could be the sunshine. It could be the air in your lungs. It could just be another day. Because again, that feeling just starts to overwhelm you. And what I always tell people, and I've always said this, I forget where I got this from, and is first of all, I want you to know if you're going through this, if you are, I know it's tough, but if this is striking a chord and maybe you're getting a little bit emotional, like I want you to know, first of all, I don't even know you, but I love you and I care about you. And I hope that you're okay. And I hope that you know that there are people around you that love and care about you. You're just not opening up and telling them what it is that's going on, and you're not connecting with them. And if you need someone, I know that there are people there. You're not going through this alone. I know that there's people that need to be there for you that maybe potentially aren't, but it's first of all, what you're going through is normal. It's whenever we get to the root of why you're still feeling this way, the reason that you're feeling that way is normal. It's like you talked about, we had a miscarriage. And again, instead of we just stigmatize it, and it's like, yeah, but it'll be okay.
I
Like
think it's just normal to meet things like we go into that fix it mode, and it becomes almost like this toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Where we genuinely, it comes from a good place. Again, I genuinely think people do the best they can, even super shitty parents.
Yeah, you just want to help.
Everybody's doing the best that they can, especially with the information that they have. And I always say, one of my personal mantras is it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your mind when you learn new information.
If we could get so many more people to do that, do you know how much that would change things? Like you're a hypocrite. I'm not a hypocrite.
I'm not a hypocrite. I just learned something new.
I'm willing to take in new information that changed the way that I looked at things to go, I never thought of that way. You know what? You're right.
And I approach this, I try to approach life with enough humility to know when I'm wrong, and when I learn that I'm wrong, and say like, hey, I thought it was this, but it's actually this, and this is what I'm doing now. And
we don't know everything. Like, I would love to default that just in this podcast.
God,
of like,
no,
I hope it doesn't ever come across that we know everything.
But we are curious and we love to learn.
Correct. I'm always going to be curious. This is the perfect example, and you and I will relate to this, and hopefully people will get it. When I got into chiropractic and wanted to do this, it was bone out of place, ouchie, ouchie, put it back in place, good, and we fixed it. That was the thought process of that's what chiropractic is, and that's how you get people better. They have a back thing that does this thing, and I do this thing, and it makes it better, and then boom, your body's better.
Patient comes in and says, I hurt here, pointing to their low
Correct.
back.
And then you poke
on their low back and make some crack, some pop, snap, crackle, pop, some noise.
And then they're better.
And then maybe.
Maybe, if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
You hope. And again, this is when we're in school and you're understanding this. And then, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And trust me, chiropractic's gone through all these things. We had different models. We had what's called the nerve tracing model, where it was like, oh, this nerve goes to this organ, so an adjustment in this area would improve that. Well, based on neurology and what we know now, that's not necessarily true. Like that, we were wrong. We were wrong in that, and a lot of our history is we were wrong. Fortunately, but we sort of were falling in the right direction.
Well, our history is chiropractic was getting these results, and we were constantly trying to figure out why.
Correct.
And so
chiropractic and X-ray were actually discovered in the same year. So I hope you realize it was like, oh, cool, we found this. They had no idea what they were doing, radiating people out of their brains. Probably not a good idea. But we were able to go, wow, I can actually see what is going on inside of you.
Yeah.
Well, let me figure this out. Like when chiropractic was first being developed, they had basically, every segment got adjusted. If one adjustment's good, then an adjustment of everything must be even better. And then they were like, no, that's too much. And then it was like majors and minors. We'll adjust major and minor segments, and we'll check all this stuff out. And then they just slowly started to hone this in. And even when they got to what we do with upper cervical and the top two bones in your neck and how they're so different in their relationship to your brainstem, they were still wrong.
Right.
It still wasn't in the right frame of mind. So then, for us, when we were in school, I always talk about the technique that we do. There's a program where we go learn that. Like, they have weekends and we go learn. And I was like 5 trimesters into chiropractic school, and I had built this, I call it my chiropractic house. This is my house. As I gain knowledge, I'm like, yep, that makes sense. And I put it in my house, and I built another piece of my house, and I went to the Art of the Specific, and they dropped an atomic bomb on it. And I was like, shit, my house doesn't make any sense because of this. It all has to come back to this. So all that big, long story to say is like, I'm okay changing my mind if there's something that literally proves to me that it's like, hey, based on this is what we're looking at. I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so now I no longer think this way. I think this way, or I look at things this way. But I
think that lends into our expertise of, like you mentioned earlier when you were helping this person in Minnesota, and they haven't been able to get to the office and they're struggling, and you're walking them through some things, but you don't have any training. Obviously, we're not therapists. We're not counselors. However, and I won't even say however, like, stop. We're not therapists. We're not counselors.
No.
I often get called that in the clinic simply because our expertise, right? Our expertise in the nervous system, we know where behavior comes from. We know where these symptoms come from. Therefore, we know how to help because we know what your brain responds to, what your nervous system responds to. And we know when you're operating in your primal part of your brain, the lizard part, the limbic system, the brain stem, all these parts that get activated when we're in chronic survival mode or chronic fight or flight. And we know when we're operating from our prefrontal cortex, which comes online a little bit later, when we're able to consciously think and make clear decisions and approach things with calmness and clarity, when our nervous systems are adaptive in the way that they're supposed to. So we're not constantly on the gas pedal, but we're able to use the brake pedal when necessary. These systems need to be dancing with one another versus the fight or flight system just constantly stepping on the rest and digest system's toes, right?
Yep.
And we know what that looks like because of our experience, because of our knowledge, because of all of our learning and our training that we've done. We're able to talk with people and very clearly see, okay, this is where we're at. Tell me about your history. I bet you've got these. I bet this and this and this is in there, right? Well, yes. Okay, great. This is how we can move forward. Start doing some of these things. If we can get you into the clinic, even better, because now we have objective measurements and data to track how you're doing.
To back up what it is that's going on.
Right.
And I would also just say that, again, you're right. We're not a therapist or a psychologist or any of that stuff. But you don't have to be human and to connect with someone and to just
love that.
You know when something is going on with someone. And again, you know when there's probably a time that you should approach it and probably when you shouldn't. Like, you can walk into a room and go, Mom and Dad were just fighting in this room. And you can feel that energy and you're like,
walking on eggshells.
Yes. And Remy literally can't stand that. And she like forcibly wants to make things like, no, like do this, kiss Mom, whatever it is. Like
Georgia can't either. Georgia's only 5 months old and she'll cry.
And they get like
she
really.
knows like when we get, I call it getting Tony, you know, when you.
Because they understand, they hear that it has a way that it carries across. That's why I want to say that. Like I'm not trying to sit here and say, look at what I've done and look at these things. I'm saying when you know someone has a past history of dealing with that, or they're going through a struggle or something happened, maybe they just lost a loved one, maybe they just lost their job, maybe like something happened, check in on them. Like, I get it. We all are more worried about our own shit than anyone else's shit, so we just don't have time. But check in on them. Like, I guess we'll just continue to tell really interesting stories that I've dealt with. So I had a friend one time that I knew was kind of going through a struggle. Like, you know, a lot was changing in his life. There was just a lot of stuff, and he was just dealing with some stuff. Something was going on. We could tell. He had just had some radical responses in how he was acting. That you're just like, that's kind of weird. Like, I hope he's okay. And one night, I'm literally at home. It's late at night. We've got our little fort set up so him and I can just sit in the living room and watch movies. And one of my friends messages me and he's like, hey, did you see so-and-so's post on Facebook? The guy that we're talking about. And I'm like, no. And so I went over and it was just like, it was almost like a cry for what I could just tell. There was something about that statement that was just like, it was something, you know, along the lines of just like, the ability to tell the real people that are going to be there for you or whatever it is. And I already kind of knew things were unstable and not going well. So I was like, you know, what do we do? And he was like, well, I'm going to head over there. And I was like, okay, I'm going to head over there with you too. So it's like 11 midnight and I'm just like randomly going to leave my wife. Like, we're hanging out. I had so many other things that could have been more of a priority than that easily. Get over to our friend's house. His wife is obviously very distraught. He's significantly drunk. Like, literally, we probably watched him inhale damn near an entire bottle of Jack Daniels. You're like, why don't you stop him? I'm like, you got to understand, this was a very, very sensitive, like, we were all sort of walking on eggshells here trying to, like, handle the situation. I was nervous. I was scared. I legitimately think if we hadn't gone over that night, like, he may have taken his life. I genuinely think back to that moment, and I'm just like, man, if we hadn't gone, and like I'm not even really in relationship with that person anymore, but it's just like I think about like, man, I hope that he can think back to that eventually and just realize like, you know, we went over to his house and, you know, his wife was concerned and, you know, he's past military. And so I'm sure there's probably some PTSD and some other things in there. Like, I'm not trying to figure all this stuff out. She's like, you know, my buddy goes outside with the guy who's struggling and they're outside talking. I'm talking to her and I'm like, you know, they have kids. I'm like, she's like, I sent them over here. This is good. She's like, I hid all the guns in the house. Like, this stuff is very real. Like when I talk about these situations, like this stuff is real. There's people that you know that are potentially in situations like this. And so, you know, my buddy goes outside and is, you know, checking on him, and then he comes in, and then I go outside, and like he straight up has like a full emotional breakdown with me, like crying on my shoulder, wants me to like give him a hug, and it's just like going through a really rough time. And I'm just like, we're basically trying to get him calm, talk him off the ledge. And then again, he's so drunk. It's like, if we could just get you to go to sleep, we could like, let's just get you to go to sleep. Let's get a reset. Let's address this tomorrow. And fortunately that was the case. And now everything's been fine. But I want people to understand the weight and the heaviness of this, of like, there are people that are struggling with this. And, you know, there's that saying of like, if everyone had a box of all their struggles that they had, and we all like gathered up and we set it down, and you looked at everybody else's box, you'd be like, I'm going to keep my box. I'm going to go home now. Like you wouldn't want to trade. You're not like, oh, that seems fine. It's like, ooh, I didn't know you were dealing with that. You don't know what somebody's dealing with. You don't know the experience they had. You don't know that, you know, they got in a fight with their husband that morning, or their kid said, I don't like you. Like, you know, Remy did that like the first time the other day to Dave. She's like, I don't like you, mommy.
Oh,
I was
no.
like, oh, so I had to tell her, I'm like, hey, we don't say things like that. Like,
what are you feeling? Are you frustrated?
Exactly. Again, it's like we're getting through.
mad?
Yeah, it's like, what's going, you know, and
Let's talk about how to deal with those big feelings.
Big feelings, which again, we're working on and we're learning too as we go through this process. But again, like we talked about, the overarching thing for this is, especially for me when it comes to migraine patients, is most of the time with migraine, it is a severe and intense neurological disease. And the symptoms that they have can mimic stroke. They're crazy, but then they get all these tests done, they do all these things, and they don't come back with anything. So then you get in your head, the rumors about you are like, oh, you're blah, blah, blah. You just want to get out of work.
You're making it up.
You know, I've heard patients, the doctor was like, just tell me what medication that you want and I'll write it on here and you can have it. I'm like, that's not why they came to you, dude. That's not what they're there for. So that stigma when somebody's dealing with that, or somebody's got fibromyalgia and they just have this pain all over their body and they can't understand it. They didn't choose this life. So there's a little bit of a, you know, first of all, come at the approach. Let's like make some notes here and let's have a couple takeaways from this. Don't come at it trying to offer up a bunch of solutions. Even I, as the person that knows I have a whole backpack of them, will let them vent it out first and then see if this is a good chance for me to be like, can I give you some suggestions? And typically they want that because that's what they're looking for. But when you don't have any,
but you're a doctor,
exactly.
So
when you don't have any experience,
when you are the one.
Hey, my cousin's, she just takes this this BC powder and she's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate that. That's great. Hey, how much water have you had today? It's like, if you ask me how much water I've ever had again, I will smack you in the face. And all my patients tell me that. Like, you're like, that doesn't happen. I'm like, it happens. I hear it from almost every single patient. They don't like the way that they're treated because, first of all, they're looked at as less than, and they're like, oh, and they don't want to be coddled. That's not what they're trying to do.
Most often what they want to hear is not, again, don't offer up a bunch of suggestions because your goal is to fix it for them. But that's not what they're looking for, right? They really just need you to look at them in the eyes and just say, I'm so sorry you're dealing with that. That sucks.
And I'm here. Is there anything that you need? Yeah. Can I bring you something?
How can I?
Is there something that helps?
Help?
Like, yeah. Is there something
what
that
do you
usually,
need from me?
Yeah. Because guess what? That person already knows their protocol for what they do when they feel like that.
And you know what? Usually what they'll say is, I just appreciate you listening. And I think sometimes people don't want to enter into those conversations because they're scared that they won't have the answers or they won't have the right thing to say, or it's going to be this big long thing that they get dragged into. And I'm telling y'all, 9 times out of 10, it's literally you saying, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks that you're dealing with that.
Yeah.
I hope you're okay. What can I do to help you?
Listen, we love to commiserate on such bullshit. Oh yeah, I hate traffic too. This weather's great. Like, there's things that we use to commiserate on that. Just be willing to commiserate with them on that. Oh my gosh. I can't even understand. I've never experienced anything like that, but I bet that's tough.
And not to take the microphone, not to one up, because this happens too is, oh my gosh, I went through that. And what helped me is this and this. Oh my gosh, I had a migraine once. You know,
Yes.
I think that comes from people trying to be empathetic, but what you're actually doing is just hijacking.
Correct.
You're hijacking the
It's
need
called
for this
making
person
it about
to be
you.
seen.
Correct.
Yeah, and you may have this huge experience that you're dying to tell them, or whatever the case, or your need for attention. You know, I don't know, but
Even
that's
if you
not
want to
what
tell
they
them about
need.
us, it's not time yet. It's okay.
Yeah, because
I know you want to offer up help, and I try to tell patients that too. Like, when you want to send somebody in here, like, you have been through this, and you know how you'd like to be spoken to when it comes to this, to try to treat it the same way.
Yeah.
Because you get really excited. I always try to tell my patients, I'm like, but don't you remember, you were a skeptical little deer when you came in here.
Right. It's scary to try something new. It's scary when all your tests up to this point have come back with nothing abnormal, no abnormal findings. You look great, but you feel like shit.
You're like,
know?
oh, okay, because that's not how I'm
Right.
feeling. And so, again, it's not about you. It's about them. Is there anything I can get for you? Trust me, they know their protocol. I need 2 Cokes, a Powerade Blue. It's got to be the blue one. Don't give me any of that. Like, they know their
Michael
thing.
Scott.
Like, yeah, it's like they know their little things. I need a pack of peanut butter cracker. Like, I know it sounds silly. You're like, what? It's like they know their thing, because one time it worked, and so now they have this whole protocol that they go into. Unfortunately,
It's like a superstition.
I need 2
you've got
Excedrin migraines. I need my injection in my leg. I need 2 sumatriptans. I need this. I'm gonna need tater tots from Sonic. Like, whatever it is, they're just gonna have these things, and you laugh, but it's true. They're gonna have their things, and you just need to be there. Just being there, just supporting them. If you're I don't know if we're going to have anyone listening to this that you know, has someone who works for them that deals with migraine. Just let them know that you understand. Give them some grace. Give them some leeway with the situation. Don't make them feel guilty, because they already struggle with that enough.
There's a so I was talking with Brandon about this before the podcast, but there's this concept called presenteeism. And so we're super familiar with absenteeism in the workplace, and that's basically you're taking time off because you're sick or whatever the case. But presenteeism started when the Great Recession happened in 2008, and people were showing up to work even though they were struggling with an invisible illness. So they would show up, they were scared of losing their job. So most often they would have anxiety, depression, migraine, fibromyalgia, really intense allergies, whatever the case. They should have been staying home, but they were scared they would be fired, or they were scared, that stigma, they were scared of how they would look. They didn't want to be pitied. They didn't want to be seen as less than. And so they would show up to work. And the data on this is showing that people are over a third less productive when they are showing up to work not well, right? And this one study I was looking at was really interesting. 20,000 employees over 3 large companies. This was done in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so this is super close to home. Banking off of what you just said about if your employer, like if you're an employer and you have employees, this is good for you to know, because there was a 320% increase in presenteeism because the employees did not feel like the employer was supportive emotionally. So
they're feel losing, like you don't got their back.
Multi-millions of dollars that company is losing just by your employees thinking that you are not a supportive person. You are not a safe person to see them and for them to feel comfortable. Over a 300% increase. Like, that's wild.
And again, I know we live in a world where it's like, get it done. I don't want to have to do all this. Like, there just needs to be some empathy, some ability to connect with that person, because again, everybody's going through different struggles. If one of your employees lost their mom the last week, how would you treat them? It would be very different. It would be
hopefully you would acknowledge it.
Yes.
Right?
I'm hoping it would be acknowledged.
It's not a quick, like, hey, sorry about your mom. Hey, so did you get the blah, blah,
exactly.
blah done?
Yeah. Did you get those TPS reports done?
And I found this other statistic of talking about depression that I thought was super interesting from Boston University. Before the pandemic in 2020, depression affected 8.5% of people. In 2020, at the very beginning of the pandemic, 27.8%.
Oh my gosh.
Get this. So they did it again in 2021 and it went up to 32.8%. So right now, at least 1 in 3 people are dealing with some sort of depression, anxiety symptoms.
So we had basically like a 4 times increase of what was going on.
Because of the past 2 years.
You've got to realize it's because we're so disconnected. You're like, well, it's this and this and this.
It's multi-factors for sure.
But community is so important. Like you're talking about reading that. I was just listening to something and it was this guy who went through his own experience with anxiety and depression. He was giving a TED Talk and talking about the multiple factors that go into it. So yes, you are right. There are some biological and genetic factors. Those are 2 of them. But then some of the other ones like we got into on this, a feeling of purpose. Yeah, a feeling of purpose.
And like you said already, like when we're in that space, all we do is focus on the negative because our bodies are in a constant state of survival. So we're constantly looking, that's just what we're primed to see versus reframe. It's either negative or it's like a toxic positivity of like, I'm just going to white knuckle this through.
Of course.
I'm going to show up to work. I'm going to ignore it.
Guys, you already heard my story.
I have no time to deal with this right now. And it comes out in freaking autoimmune issues, cancer, skin issues, anxiety attacks, mental breakdowns, addictions. It comes out sideways. It always will, because that is the nature of chronic health issues.
And your body is either you're going to take the time to make it a priority or your body is eventually going to make it a priority for you, which is what anxiety is. And like we've talked about multiple things. Yes, I know there are many factors. A lot of people that I talk to, there's typically a past history of trauma that is associated and connected with a lot of the anxiety and depression. And I cannot say it enough to empower you to talk to someone, whether they are licensed or someone that you're connected to or someone that you know, like have that conversation and talk through that, because the more you talk about it, the more you're willing to go into that, to dive into it more, the less power it's going to have. And the more you're going to, you know, I'm even trying to be careful of like not reframe. It's just the inability to allow your body to experience and express what that is and to rather hide it is the problem. When we hide things, when we do this, it's going to become worse. It's going to start to fester. It just becomes this problem versus when we face and deal it, which I know is uncomfortable and it's not fun. It's the thing that nobody wants to do. But once we do it and you're on the other side, I'm telling you, it's a cliche. It's a game changer. It's going to change the way that looks, the way that feels, and it's going to change a ton of things for you. But that's what you have to understand is we've got to be willing to do that. You also have to just know that that's okay. It's normal for you to have felt that way. Like the story that I was listening to when antidepressants were invented, there was a guy, I think it was in the UK, and he was working there. And then when they were introduced in Cambodia, they were going to work with this doctor and they were like, hey, we've got these things. They're, you know, it's antidepressants. And the guy was like, the doctor in Cambodia was like, oh, we don't need those. We already have antidepressants. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, these were literally just invented. This is what we're doing. Like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, like, I'll give you an example. There was a guy that was working in a rice farm and he had come across I think it was like a mine or something that was left over there from the war, and it literally blew his leg off. And so they got him like a prosthetic leg, and but they noticed like they got him the prosthetic leg. He was able to go back to work, but like everything with work was associated to that. So yeah, I was doing all this. And so what they did was they brought this community of people together, the healthcare providers there, and they were like, you know what? It's completely normal for you to have felt this way. Like that's normal to have gone through this and had this experience, and it was very traumatic. You lost your leg and now you're in this. And they said, you know what we can do is if we came together and we bought this guy a cow, then what he can do is start to take care of that cow. He can then turn that into a business. He can start taking care of those. He can start a dairy farm. He can start doing that. It'll get him out of that. And then it will hopefully help him be able to be better.
A new purpose.
Yeah. Because he was literally would have, you know, these bouts where he would just be crying and super emotional and just all this stuff that was a problem. Mm-hmm. Within a month after getting him the cow, he was a completely different person, completely
Wow.
back to normal. And he goes, so that's what you mean by antidepressants, right? Like, that's what we have. And so he was like, the guy that was talking about this was like, I took those medications and they did help me for a short time. But the problem is when we only make it medication driven and we don't get to the source, the problem of why you're dealing with that, what emotionally, what was it that happened that kicked this off? What was the catalyst that started this? And then we acknowledge, I feel like there's just a complete ignorance of that. The way that you're feeling is abnormal. Take these things versus the way that you're feeling is normal. Can we talk about why? Can we discuss this? Can we go into that? Because again, instead of feeling like it's some weird thing and you feel, sequestered and abnormal, for you to go, wait, there's other people that feel like this. There's other people that have gone through these experiences. I'm not the only person that's gone through this. That I think is super crucial.
And it's not just, and I feel like it's important to say that's medicine in general, right? Like all medicine, like we've said, we'll say it constantly over and over again. Medicine has a time and a place. Absolutely it does. It's a relatively short-term time and place for virtually all of them, because sometimes we need to get a handle on things and we need to do that quickly in order to function and save lives. Totally. That gives us time so that we can go back to living, right? That gives us time, both patient and doctor, to begin to find out where are these problems coming from. It's not supposed to be this super long-term thing, again, that you're supposed to do for the rest of your life, because it's a constantly a Band-Aid. Let's talk about like hypertension, constantly. People think they're healthy, but they're on some sort of beta blocker, right? And have been for over a decade. If you got off the beta blocker, would your heart rate be, or your blood pressure be normal? No, it wouldn't. It'd probably be higher than it was when you initially started. And so the goal is to figure out where is this coming from? Where is the hormone imbalances coming from? Where's the pain coming from? What are you doing in your life that we need to change? And what kind of habits do we need to put in place, or how do we need to change your environment in a realistic way? What unsexy
stuff do we need to change?
In a realistic way to make these sustainable changes, right? It's not like you need to go run a mile every single morning and take only cold showers and cook every single meal with only paleo-based, Whole30 approved, keto-friendly ingredients. Like that's not, and take 80 supplements. And
if you want to live that way, I love you, do it. But
I can't do that. I don't have time for that.
Correct.
My goal is to live as sustainably healthy as possible. And the fact of the matter is, it's these unsexy things, but these unsexy things are actually really small. They're really little. It's more about the consistency.
It's the consistency and making sure that you make the time. And you also have to realize that when you say you don't have time, that's a story that you've said in your head, because we've got plenty of time to binge an entire series of whatever show on Netflix, but you don't have time for that. It's like, no, you just don't want to make the time. And
or that it feels really big in your head, in which case it might be the way you're thinking about it. A big part of this is, that's why working with health professionals is so important, and working with the right people, because we should be able to pick these apart and put them into bite-sized pieces to create sustainable change, so that you are empowered to do it and you find that motivation because you're getting results. And so that continues to build on itself to where you actually want to do these healthy things versus having it be this big inconvenience in your life. Because I get it. I'm grew up in the fast food generation, millennial. I need things to work like that, right?
Quickly.
Snap of a finger. And so it's constantly reconciling, okay, I understand the importance of my health, because if I'm healthy, I have options. If I'm not healthy, all of my options go away, because I lose my capability to do anything that I want to do. It's harder for me to work. It's harder for me to be a mom. It's harder for me to be a wife. It's harder for me to be a daughter. It's harder for me to be a doctor. Everything is harder, and all you want back is your health. So if we have our health and we make those investments in the first place, it just makes everything easier flow from that.
And it gets big. And again, let's just say all the cliches in this episode. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
The problem continues to get bigger and bigger because no one's been able to help you, but that doesn't mean that no one can help you. That doesn't mean that that's the solution.
Seeing that from the rooftops.
Yeah. And so to kind of close this episode out, I'm going to give you guys something, because even Alex talked about this, and I hope it'll shift the perspective, because you kind of talked about like beta blockers or high blood pressure, because again, there seems to be this, like, at this age, at some point, you're going to end up going to the doctor, and guess what? They're going to put you probably on some sort of high blood pressure medication.
Like if you're over the age of 50, you're probably on a medication.
You're probably going to be on at least a high blood pressure medication and a cholesterol medication. It's almost pretty much guaranteed. And
maybe have some sort of insulin resistance.
Yeah, again, we get
diabetic.
Man, don't make us start diving into all these, because there are a ton of factors. But here's the thing. So you're like, but yeah, I have to be on that, like, because of, again, I know the mentality, but no, my doctor said I have to be on this. And again, you're like, super important. I don't want to die of a heart attack. Like, you're worried about that. You're worried about your heart's function. And here's how I would challenge you on that just a little bit. We can take a heart and hook electrodes up to it and make a heart pump. So I can make a heart pump without.
Yeah. How does heart surgery
without
happen?
any, exactly. Right. Like, you can literally, externally do that. But what I cannot do is make a heartbeat faster because you're walking upstairs or running, or beat slower because you're laying down and resting. And you're like, well, duh, that's obvious. And I'm like, is it though? Because what you have to understand is there's an intelligence inside of your body that is controlling that. And so we need to figure out what's interfering with your connection to that source that's creating the problem, so that you can get better. Like, I just recently had a patient, she went through this. She went to the doctor. She'd been very stressed. Her blood pressure was through the roof, and she got put on a medication, and she came to me as someone that she trusts on, what do I do? We put her through a different program that we have, and she improved some other lifestyle factors and was off of her medication within a month. And that was not based off of, I didn't take her off of it. She went to the doctor. They said, wow, we've never seen anyone turn around this fast. Amazing. I don't think that you need this anymore. And I'm like, wow, what a concept. That's amazing. And she's better, and she's doing fantastic. And now she's like she's going like banshee on this stuff that we're doing. So
I love that. I had a patient, it's on my, I just shared it to my story. She texted me and was like, my blood pressure was high. It was high. And then she ended up needing an adjustment that day. I adjusted her, and then she had a doctor's appointment, and her blood pressure was perfect. It was low. It was great. And she was super excited. Doctor was super excited. And
you should look and see what your Whoop does. Like, the next time that you get adjusted and you lay down and relax. The last time that happened, Grant was taking care of me at my resting heart rate while I was still awake went to what I do when I'm asleep. It went all the way down into the 50s where I do when I'm resting. And it was just like literally immediately after you could watch it. It was like, and then it was like, and then it just stayed there while I was resting. It was amazing. Part of why. Yeah. That's what your dad needs to get us is Whoop. We need to get. Come on, Whoop. Sponsor our podcast. Tell them, guys. Tell them that they need to be a part of this.
I was going to say, to piggyback off of that high blood pressure, fun fact, your baroreceptors, which control your blood pressure, are at your brainstem, which sits in between the top two bones. So how can an adjustment affect your blood pressure?
I can't wait for you guys to go. I want to see an episode on what you guys do. I want you to get into that, because that episode, we'll have to really control ourselves on that episode. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you. I'm so glad you came to hang out. I hope we address this. Treat your friends who deal with chronic health issues, or like, if you are struggling with that and you want your friends to be able to treat you better, like, share this episode with them. Hey, this is how I would like to be treated. And if there's feedback that you want to give to us, like, hey, this is what I would like, or we're always open to hear that. I want to hear your perspective on it too. But that is why we are here.
Yes, that is why we were here. We just want to help. And so definitely send this to anybody that you think of. Hopefully it resonated with you as well. Also, fun fact, we have a podcast. We have a website, youcrackmeuppodcast.com. You can go there. You can listen to any episode you want on the website, as well as Apple or Spotify. What we have on the website is a contact form. And so you can literally fill it out, write us a message, let us know what's going on, whether that's feedback for the podcast or whether you have a specific issue, a chronic health issue going on. This made you think of a loved one. They have something going on, and you just have some questions. We would love to be able to answer those questions or find you the answers to those questions. So youcrackmeuppodcast.com. Go on there, give us some feedback. We would love that, as well as some feedback. Feel free to leave us some reviews. We're always loving those reviews.
Yeah. Come on. Tell us what you think. For real, whether it's good or bad. Mostly good, but it's fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Or bad. But also good.
Be honest. Yes. I'm going to empower you to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
So,
We can
okay,
handle it.
guys.
We're here for your big feelings.
I love you.
Bye.
Bye.